Good morning. So I am out in my workshop right now. I got a package from Up Paint, which if you're not familiar with them, they're like an upcycled paint company. They literally take paint and you can send them your paint, and they take it and they upcycle it. So I feel like a lot of people's first initial thoughts about upcycled paint is that it's not going to be good enough than if you went to, like, I don't know, Sherwin-Williams or one of those kind of big brands and bought paint. But the reality is you're going to have a lot of super high-end quality paint that is donated to be recycled, and that's what this paint is made out of. So it's actually very high quality and it's a very cool concept. And when you're done with it, you can send it back and they'll recycle it. It's also sold at Michael's as well, which is very cool. Oh, as you can see, I love their packaging. Up Paint, this is their premium chalk. It's pre-tinted, ready to paint in their pale ivory. Green Escape. Deep Anchor, it's like a navy blue. And I got a shipping label to send back any of the paint that I don't use or any extra paint that I have laying around. I have a label that I can send that back in so I can recycle that. So I also got 2 of their brushes. This is their 1.5 angled sash firm. It is ideal for latex, Venetian plaster, metallic paints, and it's created from an eco-friendly compounded bamboo material. So this is their chalk, milk paint, and furniture salve brush. Same thing, made of eco-friendly compounded bamboo material, and it's rounded, which I love these kind of brushes for. It's really soft. It's the only time I can do this before I put paint on it. It's very soft. Feels like a makeup brush. Yeah, so I love using these for the furniture salves, like in drawers and stuff. So, oops. It's like really soft. I'm a weirdo, aren't I? So I also got their upcycled cardboard 4-inch paint tray and 3-pack liners. So look at that. It's literally recycled cardboard. Very cool. And then their 4-inch mini roller is made of also bamboo, like a bamboo composite, I believe. So yeah, very cool. That's really neat. And their foam rollers, I got 2, Mrs. Smooth. And then the last thing that I got was their furniture salve. I like to put this stuff in drawers. I like to sometimes use it as a top coat, which is probably what I'll do. And this is their fresh lemon citrus. Oh, that smells good. I was about to put it to the camera so that you guys can smell it, but I forgot that's not a technology thing yet. Yeah, it smells really good. Yeah, ASMR. So yeah, that's cool. Yeah, let's get started on a project with it. So I got this record cabinet on Facebook Marketplace for only $80. Now, record cabinets are something that I will always overpay for. I'll always buy them when I see them. I just love them so much. So I saw this one pop up, and you know, it doesn't actually look that bad. It is definitely not walnut. The original owners seem to paint the sides and the edges in black. They left the inside as is, which was in a little bit of rough shape. There's some really cool brass detailing on the legs. And the sides, like the black paint they painted it in, seemed to be chalk paint. A little bit of uneven sanding, but overall it's in really good condition. So I started off by attempting to sand off the painted sides with 120 grit on my Festool. I freaking love this Festool. It's the 125 REQ Plus. I use it so much. It's so ergonomic. It's so smooth. My hand doesn't hurt. And it really just like gets the job done. So I completely totally love this and recommend this, and that is not sponsored at all. So I started sanding and I noticed that the paint wasn't coming off very easily, which was kind of annoying. With 120 grit, it should be coming off fairly easily. And so I looked at the paint, and you can kind of tell from the video how the paint begins to clump together on the piece. So that usually means that my sanding pads are gumming up, and this could be due to a lot of different things. It can be due to low quality paint, not being prepped properly, the paint isn't cured. There's just a lot of different factors that can cause that. So I noticed that I wasn't getting very far, so I decided to break out my Baco, I think that's how it's pronounced, scraper. So this scraper is honestly one of the most underrated tools I have in my workshop. I don't know why more people don't have these. It is such a time saver when it comes to pieces like this or pieces with really thick varnish that are just going to take years to sand off if you're just using a sander. So I highly recommend this tool. I get a lot of questions about it and how it works. It kind of works like a razor that you use on your legs or your face. It's not going to gouge the wood. I mean, it can gouge the wood if you take the corner of it and kind of drag it across, which is actually really hard to do. So it's very beginner friendly, user friendly. It's very ergonomic. It can be a little bit of a workout. You get used to it over time. Some people do complain about the sound that it makes. It makes like a really squeaky nails on a chalkboard sound, depending upon what you're scraping off. But as long as you have headphones or music playing, it's pretty tolerable in my opinion. And so it's such a time saver. So I basically scrape off as much as I can, and then I'm going to go back with my sander and I'm going to sand off any of the remaining finish. So I went back with my Festool and I used 120 grit to get off the rest of the varnish and paint and everything else that was on it. This is veneer, so I was super careful not to press too hard on my sander, which one can leave some piggly squiggly marks, or I could burn through the veneer. So I was very careful with that. So I repeated the process on the other side, and so you can see that I didn't even attempt to sand on this side. I just went straight to the scraping, and it went by so much faster than if I were to sand it. I wish I just started with this on the other side, but you live and learn. So anyways, here's a satisfying time lapse of the other side. So once I finished both of the sides, I flipped the piece onto its back and it was time to take care of the front. Now the previous owners did sand these front drawers, so I had to be extra careful because the veneer was already pretty thin, but thankfully it doesn't seem like they put any sort of varnish or sealant on top of it, so it's really easy to just sand whatever stain they had put on it previously. Then after a few minutes, I realized it was probably not the most efficient or easiest thing to do while these doors were still attached to the hinges, but if you've ever tried to put on a door back on its hinge after you've taken it off, it never goes back on the same. So I always try to avoid this at all costs. It just makes my life easier. Anyways, once I did that, I started to sand off any of the paint that was on the inside of the drawers. And then you can see I'm using this little rubber block thing. This is what I call like my magic eraser. This is a literal magic eraser. So it's an $8 block of rubber. I'll link it in the caption. Basically, I use it throughout the lifetime of my sanding pad. It helps rejuvenate it,
clean it off, and it decreases my cost of supplies because my sanding pads last longer, therefore I'm spending less money on supplies and increasing my profit. So it's a great little tool. It really does the trick. And here's another little life hack. I always save any of my leftover sandpaper, no matter how gross it is, and I use it for situations like this where I can fold it up and use it to get into hard to reach places. And now you're gonna see me taking off the doors finally. I wish I just did this in the beginning, but I really tried hard not to take them off, but it just kind of got to a point where I realized it was probably for the best. And another pro tip, always unscrew the bottom first and the top last. Otherwise, gravity always wins. And then I'm going to sand off the rest of the doors. So I was able to get the edges a little bit better and the corners, which I couldn't get with my round orbital sander while the doors were still attached. Now, another life hack. I am just full of those today, aren't I? You know how I said that I always save my sanding paper? Well, you're gonna see me here trace one of those old pieces of sandpaper and cut it to size so that it can fit on my multi-tool with the sander attachment. I love this little multi-tool because not only does it have a sanding attachment, but I can also use it for cutting, grinding, for a whole variety of situations. This one is from Hart. It is battery operated. Another thing that you could probably use is a mouth sander, which is a little bit bigger, but it still has that kind of pointed edge. So as you know, prep is everything, but we're finally done with that. And now it's on to the fun part, which is painting. I originally planned to just completely restore this piece and bring it back to its original life, but the wood wasn't the best quality and I felt like it needed a little retro flair. So what you're gonna see me do here is add some painter's tape to create a line. I'm eyeballing everything. I should have probably used like a laser level, but you know, sometimes it's fun to just wing it, right? And so I created this line and then I'm gonna take some polyurethane and I am going to use it on the edge of the painter's tape. Now what this does is it helps reduce any bleed through so that you have sharp, crisp lines. Once that dried, I went back and I'm using Up Paint's recycled chalk paint in the color Deep Anchor. It's like this rich navy. And I'm also using their upcycled brush as well, which is really soft. This is a beautiful color and you guys are gonna squeal, but this is the first time I've ever used chalk paint. Yes, I'm a furniture flipper and I have been doing this for a few years now and I have never used chalk paint. So I didn't really know what to expect because I feel like the internet hates on chalk paint so much. So I was a little nervous, but it honestly went on so good. I think a lot of it had to do with the really high quality brush and it dried to a matte finish, which I love a matte finish anyway. So honestly, I'm kind of a chalk paint fan now. So once I painted that line, I added a little bit more painter's tape to the top because I realized it did need a little bit of paint around the edges like the previous owners had put. I just felt like putting it around the edges would kind of tie in the blue line that I had put on it and not make it look so random. So once I put down the painter's tape, I put a little bit of polyurethane, and once that dried, I went back with the navy chalk paint and applied that along the edges. Now it's time for a satisfying tape pull. Well, it was supposed to be satisfying. So I peeled off the angled line first, and you can see that it wasn't completely a sharp line. However, the horizontal line was pretty sharp, and so are the edges. So what I think caused the bleed through was the veneer. I think the wood grain was too open on the wood veneer, which caused the bleed through. So next time, I'm not sure what I would do differently. So to save it, I went back and I added a smaller line above the blue using Up Paint's Pale Ivory. It's like a really pretty white color. And so I painted that on top and that kind of hid a lot of the bleed through. I also felt like it added a little bit more of a retro touch, which I really loved. And again, I was super impressed with this paint. Then I don't know why I left this for kind of one of the last steps, but the legs. So the previous owners had never sanded or touched the legs. It seems like they did put a little bit of gold spray paint on the tips where there may have been some brass like little feet. So what I did is I went back and I scraped off the old finish. I always feel like this is the easiest way to deal with rounded legs. And then after that, I can go back and use my orbital and just kind of sand off any of the areas that I missed. And it always works like a charm. If you do have anything like a surf prep or some foam pads that you can attach to your sander, that also works as well. So once I finished the legs, I had a last minute thought to paint the inside of the piece. The bottom specifically was really worn, and I just felt like it would kind of tie the rest of the blue accents together and would add like a little nice touch without it being too much and too painted. So I went and I added added that, and it was honestly so satisfying. Like, I cannot even describe how smooth this paint goes on. It was just really nice to hand paint for once. And then it was time to seal the wood and the paint. So I used Up Paint's Furniture Salve. It is their lemon and citrus scent, and I used their chalk and salve brush, which is also really, really soft. I really enjoyed this brush. So you can actually apply this furniture salve with either the brush or with a lint-free rag. I tried out both. I did feel that the brush was less messy. It didn't get on my hands, obviously, because I was using the brush, but I was able to get more of a surface area done faster when I did use a lint-free rag. So it's really up to you, whatever personal preference is. If you want to save money and not get the brush and just use the salve, that works too. But it did add a beautiful finish onto the piece, and it smells so good. So my last step was to put the doors back on, and thankfully they went on super smoothly. I didn't have any issue with the doors opening and closing, which is a very rare occurrence, so I'm very happy about that. So I'm pretty much finished with the record cabinet. All I have left now is to really just stage it. So I'm gonna add a rug, I'm gonna add some vinyl, maybe a little picture, and take some before and after videos. So let's do it. So I added the vinyl, and I also added a plant and a little picture along with some fancy little disco balls. And just so you remember, this was the before and this is what it looks like now. I'm very happy with how it turned out. I feel like I honored the original piece while adding a little retro modern flair to it. So now I need to decide how much to list it for. So let me know in the comments what you think this is worth, what I should list it for, and don't forget to check the caption for all the step-by-step details, and also don't forget to subscribe.